What's up, guys? So I just wanted to start off by talking about something that you guys probably already know. Phone numbers, those are not actually customers. When you get a lead, it's not a customer, but you do actually need to define what a lead is and the different stages of it. You need to track it, and then that's how you get paid. When you have this proper understanding of what leads are, it creates positive outcomes. What you think becomes what you believe. What you believe generates your outcomes, right? So this training aims to actually standardize those definitions for you and then give you some scripts so that way your team can stop hurting over phone numbers that you're not able to contact, whatever it is. So that way you're actually able to start tracking booked revenue more clearly, right? So there's 4 objects in this whole process. There's leads, qualified leads, booked on-site estimates, and then closed jobs. So let's go over what that is really quick, right? A lead is just a contact method. A lead is just a phone number or an email, nothing more. So right off the bat, I know a lot of you guys, what you actually consider the lead is what we consider a qualified lead. A qualified lead is a lead that's actually fit for you, that runs a project, and they have a plan. They know the square footage, they know the type of floor that they want, and then they've actually been confirmed that they're in scope, that they're not looking for concrete pouring when you only do coatings, right? So essentially meaning that they have a type of coating that they're interested in, and they provide their square footage and that they're ready for the next step, right? Which the next step is actually booking an on-site estimate. And then on-site estimate is an actual calendar commitment, a date, a time, their address, all confirmed, and a reminder set as well. Now, once you go, you give them the estimates, whatever. At that point, they may become a closed job where they give you money for the deposit and you lock in a date, right? They signed an agreement and there's a deposit paid. And then the install date is actually locked in. If it's not on the calendar, it's not a booked job. It's not a booked on-site estimate. It's not a closed job, right? If there's no deposit, or at least the final paid invoice, if you don't take deposits, then it's not a closed job. And there's a lot of confusion that happens in this space, right? I talk to guys all the time and they're like, we got 40 leads this month. You got 40 phone numbers. Yes, they are leads, but how many of those are actually qualified and how many of those actually book, right? Or they'll say, oh, yeah, no, they're interested. Well, interest is not a commitment. It's on the calendar or it didn't happen at all. Or you might say, oh, well, they said yes. After I gave them the estimate, they sounded they were interested, or they said yes. A verbal yes does not mean that the job is closed. The deposit collected, that's the decision maker. Once you've collected the deposit, that's when you know that you're actually confirmed at that point, right? And then, so what are the stage gates? These are basically like the pass or fail rules for moving people from lead to qualified lead to an on-site estimate to a closed job, right? So level 1 to level 2 is moving from the lead to qualified lead, right? All of these things must be true. There must be a service fit, which is basically like, where's the job at and what kind of job? Is it in our zone? And is it actually surfaces that we can quote, like the garage, a basement, a shop, not something weird, right? Soft asphalt or something. I know you guys can actually go over wood in some circumstances, right? But the other thing is, when, like, do they want it within the next 60 days, or do they actually have a real target date set? And then, is there a budget fit? Are they cool with your square footage price, the $6 to $12 per square foot, or whatever that might be, that range might be, right? And then, are they also the person who says yes? Are they going to be, if they're the person that'll say yes, then they need to be there for the on-site inspection. And you need to make sure that there's not other decision makers like a wife or a husband that need to be there too, right? And if they don't mark any of these, they're not actually qualified. You want to park them in nurture, which means to put them in a nurture workflow where you send tips or you just follow up with them later. You get reminders to follow up with the person, about their spouse or whatever the situation may be, right? So level 2 to level 3 is moving them from qualified to a booked on-site lead, right? Which is obviously the on-site is locked in on the calendar with the day, the time, and then this is going to be on your calendar, right, for the on-site inspections, that you've got their full address, the real street address, not like a pin drop or just in your memory they said they were over here or something like that, right? And then also you want to make sure before the on-site inspection that you're actually sending them something, like a text and an email with a prep checklist, like, hey, clear the floors, make sure that we can access everything. And then obviously the reminders are set T 24 hours or T 2 hours before the event, that you actually have those SMSs. If it's not booked, then they're just interested at that point. It's just an interested lead, but they're not actually qualified, or they may be qualified, but they're not booked at that point, right? And then book to close job, obviously, you have sent them a quote and they've accepted the quote. You've collected the deposit, you've set the install date, and then you thank them at the end. Which, if you don't know about the post-sale messages, make sure you watch the last video I did about the closer sales process. It's part of the sales process. You want to make sure that you thank them and then let them know what happens next in the process, from them paying you to you doing the job, right? And again, if you miss one of these, they're not actually closed. It might be a maybe, but it's not a job, right? And there's 2 rules in this that you can't break. If there's no calendar, if they're not on the calendar, then they're not actually booked. If there's no deposit, then they're not actually closed, right? And you can use this framework to coach your team through, right? If they pass all of the boxes, if you've hit all of those points, then they moved from lead to qualified lead to on-site to close. And if you miss any of that, they need to stop and go back and fix some of that, right? So again, just quick definitions on this. A lead is somebody that where you can say, hey, we can contact them, right? A qualified lead is somebody that you're saying we should go see them. A booked job, it means that, or a booked estimate means that we are going to see them. And a closed job means that we're getting paid to do the install, right? And there's actually a qualification script that you guys can go through more in depth, but basically there's an opening, you want to check for fit. Where's the project located? What area are you coding, about how many cars or square footage is the space, double check on their timing and their budget, like when are you hoping to have it done, and then give them your range, right? Confirm, is it still worth a look before you actually go, which we actually do this automated. We send them the range and then tell them to book an on-site, right? But if you want to know more about that, you can reach out to me. You want to check for the decider, like will all the decision makers be there for the on-site inspection? And again, this script is something that you can give to your employees, right? I just wanted to connect that again, right? And then if they're outside of the zone, the timeline, just say, hey, we'll follow up with you, or it looks like we might not be able to do the job, right? For actually locking in the calendar date for the on-site inspection, once you've gone through and you've done your opening, hey, we got your submission, hey, where's it at, what area are we doing, are you good with the square footage, is everyone going to be there, cool, now I've got you locked in for this date, this time, this day at this address, and I'll send you a checklist before we get there. You'll just get reminders for the installation date before we actually come out. Does that sound good? Right? And then you just send them the address confirmation, and then the prep checklist if you have one. If not, get that and then give that to your appointment setter or whoever is doing that for you, right? And then the closing script, right? Once you go to the on-site inspection, you just have to ask them a simple question, right? Hey, want me to go ahead and get you on the install schedule? And then let them give you, well, no, I'm concerned about it peeling, and say, hey, look, this is why it's not going to peel. Or they're concerned about the price. Then you have the opportunity to negotiate with them, right? But you want to lock it in. Hey, yeah, I can do it for this much. The deposit's going to be 50%. That will reserve your install date, and I can text you the receipt and the next steps once you paid that deposit, right? And so what metrics do you want to look at when you're looking at, your leads and your conversion rates and all of that? The first rule is that leads, they don't pay you, right? Leads are phone numbers, right? Booked on-site estimates and closed jobs, those actually do pay you, right? So that's the first rule. Now, speed to lead is something that you want to look at. What is speed to lead? It's how fast you reply to a new phone number that you get. And the reason that this matters is that people text up to 3 places at a time. The first one to reply actually wins. People go out and they're like, let me just get a couple quotes, right? If you're the first one to reply, if you're super on it, if you're knowledgeable and your pricing is good, probably going to close that job, right? And then how do you measure speed to lead? You take the percentage of new leads that you get and that you actually call within 60 seconds or 5 minutes. 5 minutes is typically the furthest you want to go out. A good speed to lead percentage is 90% of your leads. You don't want a bunch of leads waiting an hour before you call them, right? For example, if you get 10 new leads today, you reply in 1 minute to 5 minutes to 9 of those leads. The speed to lead would be 9 leads replied to divided by the 10 leads you got, which is 90% speed to lead, right? Your qualification rate. What is this? This is how many leads are actually worth a visit to you, right? You don't want to drive across town for tire kickers. So your how you measure that is you take your qualified leads, how many are actually qualified, how many give you their details, how many are ready to book an on-site, but maybe don't book an on-site. But again, just how many people actually come in and say that they have a project and want you to come out or want a number, divided by how many leads you get. And your target for qualified leads should be 50 to 70%. So let's say 100 leads come in, you get 60 leads that pass the fit check, the timing check, the budget, and the decider. They've got everybody. The decision makers are going to be there. They're fully qualified. That if there's 60 of those 100 leads, that would give you the 60% qualification rate, right? So you don't want that to be like 10 people. Obviously, that's not good. That's actually really bad. And then your booking rate. Your booking rate is how many leads actually get a real calendar slot. So again, if you get 100 leads, 45 book a slot, your booking rate is going to be 45%. If 50 people book out of 100 leads, you've got a 50% booking rate, right? And the reason that this matters is that people being interested is not commitment, but them actually scheduling on the calendar. That's a more qualified lead. They're more intentful to buy from you, right? So you want to track that and see, like, out of all of the leads that I'm getting, how many are actually booking. I know a lot of you guys are not tracking this, so I wanted to at least give you the data. My clients, you guys can use this to check what we're doing. I wanted to give you that update. If you're watching this and you don't work with me, you can start tracking these numbers and you can find out if your marketing is doing good or if there's something happening when you're going on site or when you're sending the quote, right? So another main metric you want to look at is your show up rate, which is how many booked visits actually happen. Like if you book a bunch of on-site inspections, are you actually getting to go to them, or are they canceling all the time, or are they not no-showing? Because no-shows are going to waste your gas and your time, right? And so how you measure this is taking your on-sites that you actually go to and you're able to talk to the lead, divided by how many leads actually booked an on-site inspection. And so if they're booking an on-site, you should be able to meet them. So the target should be pretty high, 80 to 90%. It honestly should be 100%. But let's say you get 100 leads, 45 booked. That's that 45% book rate. Out of those 45, let's say that 40 of them actually happen. So 40 divided by the 45 booked, that's an 89% show up rate, which is, again, that's ideal and good. So close rate, this is one that people always get confused about. People think that your close rate is the on-sites, or they think that your conversion rate might be the on-sites to paid jobs. I'll just let you guys know your conversion rate is every single lead that turns into a paid job. So if you get 100 leads, how many turned into paid jobs? That's your conversion rate. Your close rate is how many on-site inspections did you go to and how many of those have turned into paying jobs, right? Because that's what actually is turning all of the time that you're spending into money. And so how do you measure your close rate is your closed jobs divided by the on-site inspections that you've done. And your close rate should be anywhere from 35 to 60%. If it's 100%, your pricing might be off. If it's too low, your sales might be off. You might not be as good at sales as you think you are. So it's always great to see. Close rate is a good thing, but most people only focus on that. And if you don't focus on your conversion rate, that's where you can, when you look at your conversion rate, you can see if your marketing is actually, if you have a good marketing team or not. If your conversion rate is really messed up, it's an issue on marketing side. If your close rate is really messed up, that's an issue on the business side. Something with your sales, something with your pricing, right? So example, let's say that you go to 40 on sites, you get 20 closed jobs out of that. Your close rate is going to be 50%. Your conversion rate is going to be like 5% or something like that. It's going to be a lot lower, right? Out of 100 leads, only 20 jobs closing. Yeah, it's got to be, maybe it's not as low as like 5, but it's probably somewhere 5 to 20. And then your average ticket price is, the average dollars per job. Bigger tickets, it's the same work, but you end up getting more profit. So that's always helpful, right? So it's the total number, dollar amount closed divided by the number of jobs. So if you got 96,000 from 20 jobs, your average ticket price is $4,800, which is good. Some guys I talked to, it's only about $2,000, right? And then days to close is another huge metric. And what this is how long does a typical job take to go from the on-site visit to being paid? Faster closes equals faster cash, more cash flow. And then the way that you measure this is you just try to find the median days from on-site to deposit. Most residentials is 3 to 10 days, but I see some guys go way further, like 35 days, So you just want to make sure you're trying to close people essentially. And so what do you celebrate? If you don't want to celebrate, look, we got 100 leads or we got 50 leads. What you want to celebrate is the booked on-site inspections, how many jobs you've actually closed, your average ticket price going up, and your days to close going down. And when things are moving that way, that's like the perfect indicator that things are going right. If your average ticket price is going down and your days to close is going up, that might mean you have a new salesperson on your team, right? But again, that's, you want to track those numbers, not how many leads you've got. And it's not about getting more leads as well. It doesn't matter how many leads you got if none of them are booking on sites. And I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. But if your speed to lead is low, then that means you need to turn on instant text. You need to turn on AI. You need to set up a missed call text back. You need to send out like, hey, get this quote here, get this quote here, 2 times and do it fast. You need to move. Sometimes double call with leads, call them a second time, right? If your qualification is low, you need to ask about the budget in the ads. You need to confirm that the decision makers are going to actually be there, and you need to disqualify those leads a lot faster if the qualification is just coming in low, right? If your booking rate is low, then just offer 2 times, not like, well, when works best for you? Say, hey, can we come out tomorrow at like noon or at 5? Not like, hey, well, when works best for you? Decisiveness, be a little bit more decisive. And then obviously once you book, send the prep checklist and all of that. If your show up rate is low, you need to just send more reminders. Make sure you're reminding people that you're going to be there, right? If your close rate is low, go back to my last video, the closer, and run the closer process. Sell what happens after, sell the outcome, not the ingredients, sell the vacation, not the plane flight, and keep your answers short, right? If your average ticket price is going low, you need to anchor good, better, and best, or just anchor higher value off the gate. Don't start at $6 per square foot, start at 8 and try to walk back as far but keep it as high as you can, right? And then also offer financing is something else that you can do. And then your days to close is, if that's really high, if it takes a long time from the time you send an estimate to actually close the job, make sure that you're sending the quote on site and then follow up in 24 hours. And then also just send a payment link, just kind of push them, right? And then so just a quick scoreboard is you can like track how many leads you've got, track how many have qualified, track how many of those turned into on-sites, track how many turned into shows for the on-sites, track how many of those turned into closed jobs, track how, like, what dollar percentage you've closed in comparison to the average ticket price, and then also track your days to close, right? And so 2 questions that you want to ask when you start looking is, where are we leaking? Are you leaking a bunch of leads? Are you and they're not becoming qualified? Are there a lot of qualified leads that are giving you the project details but not actually booking? Are there a lot of bookings that are not showing? Or is there a lot of people that you're going to see and you're giving them numbers but they're not closing? Each one of those, like I said, on the front end comes from marketing. On the back end says something about your pricing or your sales capacity. And then once you see that and you look, be honest with yourself, but then what's the one thing that you're going to fix this week about that, right? If you're counting phone numbers as wins, if you're just like, yeah, we got 50 leads, you're 100% leaking cash. You need to be looking at these other numbers, right? And I do help contractors, epoxy contractors specifically, install this sales process and this data collection end to end. So if you're doing 20 to 30K a month and you want book jobs on autopilot, make sure that you reach out. You can comment booked, DM me a closer, or just hit the link in the description to apply to my program. And just remember, book jobs are always more important than leads. More leads is not the problem. More book jobs. How do we get more booked estimates? How do we close more deals? Right? Out of the leads you already have. You have to make this shift if you want to scale your business, your epoxy business to 100K months. Okay. So thank you for joining me on this. It was really good to talk to you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.